Rachel Maddow, visibly excited, announced she was scrapping her planned show to analyze what had just happened. CNN's own control room was in chaos, producers arguing whether to replay the clip immediately or wait for analysis. They compromised by putting it on a loop in the corner of the screen, while panelists reacted in real time. When Conway claimed they'd taken COVID seriously from day one, Crockett wrote, January 22nd. Contained, one person from China. When Conway insisted the tax cuts helped working families, Crockett noted, 83% of benefits to top 1% by 2027, CBO report. Conway had no idea she was walking into an ambush of facts. She thought she was entering a town hall. She was actually walking into a courtroom. And Jasmine Crockett was about to prove that in the court of public opinion, the truth still had the power to convict. Get ready for the most shocking content on the internet. Subscribe to Shockfiler now and join the Shockfiler community that's not afraid to dive into the unknown. Shockfiler. Let's get this shockwave started. Across from her, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood with the quiet satisfaction of a prosecutor who'd just gotten a confession. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't grandstanding. She simply stood there, papers in hand, wearing the slight smile of someone who'd done their homework and knew the test was over. The contrast was cinematic. Conway's unraveling against Crockett's composure. Chaos against calm. Lies finally meeting their reckoning. Conway tried once more to speak, leaning into her microphone. This is exactly... But her words were swallowed by another wave of applause. Someone in the back started chanting, Truth! 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 And within seconds, half the audience had joined in. Conway's carefully constructed facade finally cracked completely. Her shoulders sagged. Her perfect posture crumbled. The master manipulator had been manipulated into revealing exactly who she was. In 30 seconds, just 30 devastating seconds, Jasmine Crockett had done what 4 years of journalism couldn't accomplish. She hadn't just fact-checked Kellyanne Conway. She hadn't just exposed her lies. She had systematically dismantled the entire architecture of alternative facts, using Conway's own words as the wrecking ball. And she'd done it so efficiently, so precisely, that an entire auditorium of exhausted Americans had erupted in spontaneous celebration. But to understand why an entire auditorium erupted like this, we need to go back 2 hours. But to understand why an entire auditorium erupted like this, we need to go back 2 hours. To when Kellyanne Conway strutted into CNN's Philadelphia studio with the confidence of someone who'd never truly been held accountable. The town hall was billed as America's Reckoning with Truth, CNN's attempt to fact-check the fact-checkers, to finally pin down the woman who'd made alternative facts a household phrase. Conway had agreed to this format for one simple reason. She thought she owned it. Town halls meant regular Americans asking questions, and regular Americans, she believed, were easier to manipulate than seasoned journalists. She'd spent years perfecting the art of the folksy deflection, the aw-shucks dismissal, the ability to make questioners feel stupid for asking smart questions. In her mind, this would be a cakewalk, a chance to rehabilitate her image while facing softball lobs from starstruck citizens. She'd even dressed for the part. Gone was the severe DC power suit. Tonight she wore a softer blue dress, her hair styled in gentle waves, her makeup toned down to approachable mom at a PTA meeting. This wasn't the combative Conway who'd sparred with journalists. This was Kellyanne the everywoman, ready to connect with real Americans, who she assumed would be grateful just to be in her presence. The pre-show prep revealed her strategy. Conway's team had researched the audience members, nurses from Bucks County, small business owners from the Philly suburbs, teachers from Chester. These people don't follow politics minute by minute, her aide assured her. They'll ask about gas prices and schools. Just stay warm, stay vague, and redirect everything to Biden's failures. Conway had actually laughed. After 4 years of handling the White House press corps, this will be like a spa day. But CNN had a surprise. As Conway settled into her seat, adjusting her mic and practicing her concerned citizen face, host Anderson Cooper made an announcement that wiped the smirk off her face. Tonight, we have a special addition to our format. Joining Ms. Conway on stage will be Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who will help fact-check claims in real time and engage with audience questions. The color drained from Conway's face for just a moment before her media training kicked in. She forced a smile, but her eyes betrayed her. This wasn't the plan. Crockett wasn't some random citizen she could patronize. This was a former prosecutor who'd made a career of exposing liars. This was the woman who'd just 2 weeks earlier reduced a corrupt Texas official to tears with nothing but receipts and ruthless preparation. The audience itself was the wild card. CNN had deliberately selected a mix. Some Trump supporters who still believed Conway's spin, some Biden voters who despised her, and crucially, a large middle of true swing voters who'd grown exhausted with being lied to by everyone. These weren't political junkies. They were parents worried about their kids' schools, workers concerned about their jobs, citizens who just wanted someone to tell them the truth for once. You could see the divide in how they reacted to Conway's entrance. About a third applauded politely, trained by years of political theater. Another third sat with arms crossed, skeptical. But the final third? They looked tired. Tired of spin, tired of games, tired of being treated like idiots by people who thought they were too sophisticated to be caught. Conway surveyed the crowd, still trying to salvage her strategy. She could work with this. She'd handled hostile audiences before. All she had to do was charm the supporters, confuse the skeptics, and exhaust the rest. She'd done it 1,000 times. What could one freshman congresswoman do that the entire media establishment hadn't? She was about to find out. Because while Conway saw a crowd to be manipulated, Crockett saw something else entirely. She saw Americans hungry for someone to finally cut through the bullshit. She saw an opportunity to show, in real time, how professional liars operated and how to stop them. Conway had no idea she was walking into an ambush of facts. She thought she was entering a town hall. She was actually walking into a courtroom. And Jasmine Crockett was about to prove that in the court of public opinion, the truth still had the power to convict. While Conway spun her web of lies, someone in that room was taking very careful notes. But first, America needed to watch the master manipulator at work, deploying every trick in her arsenal with the precision of a surgeon and the morality of a con artist. Conway's opening statement was a masterclass in deflection disguised as patriotism. "I'm here tonight because I believe in the American people," she began, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "Unlike the media elites who think you're too simple to understand complex issues, I know you see through their games. You know that I've always fought for forgotten Americans, even when it meant standing up to the establishment that wanted to silence your voices." The audacity was breathtaking. Here was a woman who'd spent 4 years lying to those same forgotten Americans, now painting herself as their champion. She seamlessly wove together attacks on the media. They never told you the full story. False victimhood. I've been targeted for telling uncomfortable truths. And historical revision. We delivered the greatest economy in history until China unleashed the virus. Anderson Cooper tried to interject with a fact check, but Conway was ready. "There you go again, Anderson," she said, with practiced disappointment. "This is exactly what Americans are tired of. Media personalities who think they know better than the people who actually lived through these historic achievements." She turned to the audience with a knowing smile, as if sharing an inside joke. "They just can't stand that we proved them wrong, can they?" Then came the audience questions, and this is where Conway's contempt really showed. A nurse from Bucks County asked about COVID response, specifically why the administration downplayed the virus while knowing it was deadly. Conway's response was a case study in gaslighting. "Thank you for that question, and thank you for your service," she began, weaponizing gratitude as a shield. "But I think you've been misinformed by selective reporting. We took the virus seriously from day one. President Trump's China travel ban saved millions of lives, despite Democrats calling it xenophobic. Maybe you didn't see that on CNN?" The nurse tried to follow up, mentioning the Woodward tapes where Trump admitted to downplaying the virus. Conway's mask slipped for just a second, a flash of irritation at facing someone who'd done their homework, before she recovered. "Sweetie, I was in those meetings. I know what was actually said versus what was selectively edited. But I understand why you're confused. The media needed a villain, and truth was the first casualty. The condescension was thick enough to cut. Sweetie? The dismissive tone, the implication that this frontline healthcare worker was too simple to understand what she'd lived through. Several audience members shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged glances. This wasn't what they'd expected from someone claiming to respect them. But Conway was just getting started. When a small business owner asked about tax cuts that primarily benefited the wealthy, she responded with word salad designed to exhaust. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was the most comprehensive reform in a generation, delivering relief to working families while unleashing entrepreneurial spirit through regulatory modernization and competitive repatriation incentives that drove unemployment to historic lows across all demographics. 3 minutes of this, 3 minutes of economic jargon designed to make the questioner feel stupid for asking. When he tried to clarify, "But my taxes actually went up," Conway's smile turned predatory. "Well, that might be because of your state's policies. You should ask your Democratic governor why he's punishing success." The pattern was clear. Deflect, attack, confuse, condescend. When she couldn't defend, she'd offense. When cornered with facts, she'd question the questioner. When caught in a lie, she'd accuse others of lying. It was psychological warfare disguised as political discourse. And through it all, that smirk. That knowing, self-satisfied smirk that appeared whenever she thought she'd successfully confused another questioner. You could see it in the moments after each exchange. A quick flash of triumph, like a poker player who'd just bluffed their way to a pot. She was enjoying this. Enjoying the power to frustrate, to gaslight, to make people question their own experiences. The audience was growing visibly frustrated. The Trump supporters who'd come to cheer her on looked confused. This wasn't the fighter they'd expected, but a manipulator. The skeptics were getting angry, their questions dismissed and intelligence insulted. And that exhausted middle group? They looked ready to give up entirely, which was exactly what Conway wanted. She thought she was winning. Every deflected question, every confused audience member, every moment of frustrated silence was a victory in her mind. She'd turned the town hall into her personal playground, demonstrating once again that with enough audacity and word salad, you could survive any format. But while Conway performed her greatest hits, Jasmine Crockett sat quietly, taking notes, making tallies, preparing. Because Conway's biggest weakness was her arrogance, her absolute certainty that her tactics were unbeatable. She was about to learn that every trick in her playbook had a counter, and Crockett knew them all. While Conway spun her web of lies, someone in that room was taking very careful notes. Jasmine Crockett sat at her podium like a chess grandmaster watching an opponent make predictable moves, each one bringing them closer to checkmate. Where others saw Conway winning, Crockett saw a prosecutor's dream, a defendant confessing to crimes in real time. This wasn't Crockett's first rodeo with professional liars. Back in Texas, she'd built a reputation as the attorney who could crack anyone. Corrupt city officials, predatory landlords, corporate executives who thought their expensive lawyers made them untouchable. They all learned the same lesson. Jasmine Crockett did her homework, and when she did, you were finished. Her method was deceptively simple. While other lawyers tried to match liars' energy, Crockett understood that the best way to expose a lie wasn't to attack it. It was to let it breathe, let it grow, let it become so elaborate that it collapsed under its own weight. Then, and only then, you produced the evidence that made the whole house of cards tumble down. As Conway pontificated, Crockett's pen moved steadily across her legal pad. She wasn't writing rebuttals or crafting clever comebacks. She was creating a map of contradictions. When Conway claimed they'd taken COVID seriously from day one, Crockett wrote, January 22nd, contained, 1 person from China. When Conway insisted the tax cuts helped working families, Crockett noted, 83% of benefits to top 1% by 2027, CBO report. The audience began to notice Crockett's stillness. While Conway gesticulated wildly, Crockett remained motionless, except for that steady pen. While Conway's voice rose and fell dramatically, Crockett's expression never changed. It was unnerving, like watching a sniper line up a shot. Audience members found themselves watching Crockett instead of Conway, fascinated by the contrast. A teacher from Philly leaned over to her husband and whispered, "She's not even trying to interrupt." "Why?" Her husband, a veteran who'd seen enough combat to recognize strategy, whispered back, "She's letting her dig her own grave." And that's exactly what was happening. Crockett had studied Conway's patterns obsessively. She knew that Conway's greatest weakness was her compulsion to over-explain, to add unnecessary details to her lies. The more Conway talked, the more material she gave Crockett to work with. It was like watching someone hand their opponent ammunition while bragging about their bulletproof vest. During a commercial break, Anderson Cooper approached Crockett. "You haven't said much," he observed, clearly wondering if she was being overshadowed. Crockett looked up from her notes and smiled. "Mr. Cooper, my grandmother used to say, when your enemy is drowning, don't throw them a life jacket. Conway's drowning in her own lies. I'm just documenting the bubbles." Cooper's eyes widened. He'd interviewed hundreds of politicians, but this level of strategic patience was rare. Most would have been jumping in, trying to score points, desperate for sound bites. Crockett was playing a different game entirely. As the town hall resumed, Conway grew more confident. Crockett's silence seemed like weakness to her. She became more elaborate in her deceptions, more condescending to questioners, more assured that she was dominating the event. She even threw a few barbs Crockett's way. "My colleague seems to have nothing to add. Perhaps she's learning how real Americans think." The audience saw Crockett's slight smile at that comment. A few perceptive viewers noticed her write something and underline it 3 times. They didn't know it yet, but she'd just written, "Real Americans, perfect opening." 20 minutes before the end, Crockett finally looked up from her notes. She'd filled 3 pages with Conway's contradictions, false claims, and provable lies. She had tweets that contradicted Conway's current claims. She had video clips queued up on her tablet. She had government documents that destroyed every major assertion Conway had made. But more importantly, she had Conway's pattern. The spin doctor had used the same 7 techniques repeatedly: deflection, false authority, condescension, word salad, victim playing, patriotic appeals, and gaslighting. Crockett had examples of each, and she knew exactly how to dismantle them all. A production assistant approached with a time warning. "5 minutes until your segment, Congresswoman." Crockett nodded, closed her notepad, and straightened her papers. She looked across at Conway, who was midway through another elaborate deception about immigration statistics. Conway caught her eye and smirked, clearly thinking she'd intimidated the freshman Congresswoman into silence. That's when Crockett did something that made a chill run down Conway's spine. She smiled, not a political smile, not a nervous smile, but the smile of someone who knows they've already. "Ms. Conway, you just said 3 things. All were lies. Here's the proof." Crockett's words hung in the air for a heartbeat before she moved with the precision of a surgeon. She pulled out her tablet, and the large screens in the auditorium lit up with Conway's own Twitter feed. The contrast between what Conway had just said and what appeared on screen was so stark that several audience members actually laughed out loud. "First, you claimed you were talking about multiple perspectives on data." Crockett's voice was steady, professorial. "Here's your tweet from January 23, 2017. Media won't report the real numbers. We have alternative facts they refuse to acknowledge." "You weren't discussing perspective, Ms. Conway. You were claiming different facts exist." Conway's mouth opened to interrupt, but Crockett didn't even pause for breath. "Second, you just said the crowd size issue was blown out of proportion." The screen changed to a video clip. Conway's own face appeared, younger but just as defiant, speaking to NBC. "Sean Spicer gave alternative facts about the inauguration crowd. The president was clear about what he saw." The Conway on stage had gone pale. Her hands gripped the podium like she was on a sinking ship. But Crockett was just getting started. "You said X." Click. A new image. "Here's video of you saying the opposite." Click. Another contradiction. Here's the transcript where you admitted knowing the real numbers. Click. Here's you laughing about fooling the media. The audience had started murmuring. It began in the back rows, whispers of "oh my God" and "she's got everything," but it was spreading forward like a wave. People were pulling out their phones, not to scroll but to record. They sensed they were witnessing history. Conway tried to interrupt, her voice cracking. "This is taken out of..." But Crockett rolled right over her voice gaining power without gaining volume. Third, you claimed just now that you've always been transparent with the American people. The screen changed again. This time, it was a court document. Here's your deposition from the Dominion lawsuit, where you admitted under oath that you knew claims about election fraud were, quote, baseless, while you promoted them on television. A woman in the third row started clapping. Just one person, slow and deliberate. Then another joined. Then another. The sound built like rain starting to fall. First a few drops, then a shower, then a downpour. You claimed why? Crockett had to raise her voice slightly now to be heard over the growing applause. Here's the court document proving you knew better. The screen showed highlighted sections of Conway's own testimony, her words damning her more effectively than any prosecutor could. Conway's face was undergoing a transformation visible to everyone in the room. The smirk she'd worn all evening melted away, replaced first by indignation, then confusion, then something approaching panic. Her eyes darted between Crockett and the screen, looking for an escape route that didn't exist. And finally, Crockett said, delivering what everyone could sense was the killing blow, you invented the Bowling Green Massacre. The screen showed an email, an internal White House email that should never have seen daylight. Here's your message to Steve Bannon. Bowling Green thing was genius. Media spent 3 days fact-checking something that never happened instead of covering the travel ban. We should do this more often. The murmur in the crowd turned into a roar. People weren't just clapping now. They were on their feet. A veteran in the fifth row shouted, "Finally!" A teacher near the front had tears streaming down her face. Even some of the Trump supporters who'd come to defend Conway were standing, swept up in the moment of seeing someone, anyone, held accountable for their lies. Conway's mouth was moving, but no one could hear her. The standing ovation had become thunderous. Anderson Cooper was on his feet too, abandoning any pretense of moderator neutrality. The camera operators were swinging wildly between Crockett's calm face, Conway's devastation, and the erupting crowd. But Crockett wasn't done. She held up one hand, and miraculously, the crowd quieted just enough for her final words to land. Ms. Conway, you asked earlier what gives me the right to call you a liar. The answer is simple. The truth gives me that right. The same truth you've spent 5 years trying to murder. But here's what you never understood. Truth doesn't need alternative facts. It just needs someone willing to tell it. The explosion of approval that followed was unlike anything CNN had ever broadcast. 300 Americans, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, united in their hunger for accountability, their exhaustion with gaslighting, their desperate need to see someone speak truth to power and win. Conway stood frozen at her podium, her carefully constructed persona in ruins. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, like a wizard whose tricks had been revealed. Her lips moved one more time, trying to form words, but they were drowned in democracy's roar of approval. The camera caught it all. Conway's complete destruction, Crockett's quiet satisfaction, and most importantly, the faces in the crowd. These weren't political operatives or media personalities. These were Americans who'd been lied to for years, finally seeing someone held accountable. Their cheers weren't just for Crockett. They were for the possibility that truth still mattered, that facts still had power, that reality could still defeat its alternative. In 30 seconds, Jasmine Crockett had done more than destroy Kellyanne Conway. She'd restored faith in the idea that in America, eventually, the truth wins. But this was more than just a viral moment. This was America finding its voice again. Within 60 seconds of the crowd erupting, The clip was already racing across the internet like wildfire in a drought. An audience member in the third row, still standing and applauding, had tweeted simply, "OMG, she's ending her. #Crockett destroys Conway." The hashtag was trending nationally before Conway even left the stage. The real-time social media explosion was unlike anything political Twitter had seen. @Resistance. Grandma posted, "I'm crying actual tears. Someone finally did it," with a shaky video of her TV screen. The tweet got 50,000 retweets in 10 minutes. @Teacher. For Truth wrote, "Showing this to my civics class tomorrow. This is how you handle liars with receipts." Young progressives, moderate Democrats, and even some never-Trump Republicans united in a rare moment of shared celebration. News networks scrambled to respond. MSNBC cut into their regular programming with a breaking news chyron, Conway confronted with own lies in devastating town hall moment. Rachel Maddow, visibly excited, announced she was scrapping her planned show to analyze what had just happened. CNN's own control room was in chaos, producers arguing whether to replay the clip immediately or wait for analysis. They compromised by putting it on a loop in the corner of the screen, while panelists reacted in real time. Fox News, caught completely off guard, went to commercial and stayed there for an unusually long time. When they returned, Tucker Carlson was attempting damage control. What we saw tonight was an ambush, a setup designed to, but even his audience wasn't buying it. The Fox News Facebook page was flooded with comments from their own viewers. She had the receipts, though, and Conway finally got what was coming. The memes came fast and furious. Within an hour, Conway's face, that moment of recognition when she realized Crockett had her emails, became the new shocked Pikachu. Someone set her destruction to the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme. Another genius created a Conway alternative facts bingo card with all her exposed lies. TikTok exploded with young people doing Crockett challenge videos, calmly fact-checking their friends' obvious lies with deadpan delivery. Republican officials' responses were telling in their absence. Senators who normally rushed to defend Trump allies were suddenly very interested in local infrastructure projects. "I didn't see the town hall," became the GOP's official response, repeated by dozens of members who were literally tweeting during the event. Trump himself, never one to abandon ship quietly, Truth socialed. "Kellyanne Conway was always overrated. Many people are saying she wasn't even that important to my campaign. Fake news loves her." Celebrities couldn't resist weighing in. Chrissy Teigen tweeted, "This is better than any reality show finale I've ever seen." Mark Ruffalo shared the clip with, "This is how you Hulk smash with facts." Even Taylor Swift, usually politically cautious, posted the eyes emoji with #Crockett destroys Conway. LeBron James posted 3 crown emojis and nothing else. Everyone knew what he meant. But beyond the celebrity reactions and political spin, something deeper was happening. Regular Americans were sharing the clip with personal messages. "This is why I couldn't explain Trump to my kids. The gaslighting. Finally, someone showed how to fight it. My dad's been brainwashed by alternative facts for years. Just sent him this. I felt crazy for 5 years. This made me feel sane again." The clip crossed language barriers. International news picked it up immediately. The BBC called it the moment American political discourse found its backbone. French media ran it with subtitles under the headline, La fin du mensonge, the end of the lie. Even Russian state media, masters of disinformation themselves, covered it with barely hidden admiration for Crockett's technique. By midnight, the video had been viewed 100 million times across all platforms. Crockett destroys. Conway wasn't just trending, it was the top trend globally. News programs were already booking body language experts to analyze Conway's facial expressions. Communications professors were updating their syllabi to include the exchange. The Crockett method was being born in real time. But perhaps the most telling response came from the audience members themselves. Their phones captured not just the destruction but their own reactions, the gasps, the spontaneous applause, the tears of relief. One video, shot by a nurse from Bucks County, went especially viral. It showed her own face as she watched Crockett methodically present evidence. You could see the exact moment she went from skepticism to hope to joy. Her whispered, "Finally, finally, finally," became a rallying cry. The crowd's reaction became as famous as the takedown itself. Photos of ordinary Americans on their feet, cheering for truth, spread across social media with captions like, "This is what democracy looks like," and "We the people are done with lies." The standing ovation wasn't just for Crockett. It was for the possibility that facts still mattered, that preparation could defeat propaganda, that truth was still undefeated. As the night wore on and the clip played on endless loop across every network, one thing became clear. America had been waiting for this moment, waiting for someone to show them how to fight back against the avalanche of lies, waiting for proof that gaslighting could be defeated, waiting for permission to believe in truth again. But this was more than just a viral moment. This was America finding its voice again. In living rooms across the country, families who'd been torn apart by alternative facts watched the clip together, finally having a shared reality to point to. The crowd's explosive reaction wasn't just about one politician being exposed. It was the collective exhale of millions who'd been holding their breath for 5 years, wondering if truth would ever matter again. The deeper meaning of this moment revealed itself in the conversations that followed. Political scientists would later call it a paradigm shift in public discourse. But regular Americans had simpler words: relief, vindication, hope. The crowd's reaction mattered because it showed that people weren't as divided as the narrative suggested. When faced with clear evidence of deception, Americans of all political stripes stood together and applauded accountability. Dr. Jennifer Mercieka, a historian of political rhetoric, appeared on PBS within hours to explain why this moment resonated so deeply. For years, we've been told that facts don't matter anymore, that we live in a post-truth world. What Crockett proved tonight is that facts do matter. They just need to be wielded correctly. She didn't engage in the rhetorics. She didn't play the game. She simply presented evidence and let reality speak for itself. The Crockett method became an instant template for confronting liars. Within days, workshops were being organized. How to document deception, building your receipt collection, strategic patience in the face of gaslighting. Law schools started incorporating the exchange into their trial advocacy courses. Journalism schools used it to teach the difference between both sides reporting and actual fact-checking. But the real power was in how ordinary people adapted the approach. A viral thread by @MidwestMom showed how she used Crockett's technique at a school board meeting to expose a member's lies about curriculum. A small business owner in Georgia filmed himself calmly fact-checking his congressman at a town hall, complete with printed emails. The revolution wasn't just being televised, it was being replicated. The authenticity of Crockett's approach was what made it so powerful. She didn't try to outperform Conway or match her theatrical energy. She simply came prepared with facts and delivered them without drama. In an era of political theater, the most dramatic thing turned out to be someone simply telling the truth and backing it up with evidence. The audience's response represented something profound. America's exhaustion with manipulation had reached a breaking point. The standing ovation wasn't just for Crockett. It was for the possibility of a different kind of politics. One where preparation mattered more than performance, where facts trumped feelings, where truth was its own alternative to lies. Crockett's post-event statement, released the next morning, captured the moment perfectly. Truth doesn't need alternative facts. It doesn't need to be dressed up or spun or repackaged. Truth just needs someone willing to tell it and people ready to hear it. Last night, America showed it's ready. The ripple effects were immediate. Other politicians started coming to hearings actually prepared. Journalists began pushing back harder against deflection. Citizens showed up to town halls with binders of receipts. The bar for public discourse had been raised, and everyone could feel it. Even more telling were the quiet conversations happening in homes across America. Parents used the clip to teach their children about integrity. Teachers incorporated it into lessons about critical thinking. Therapists reported patients bringing it up as an example of how to confront gaslighting in their own lives. The moment transcended politics because it addressed something deeper: the human need for truth. In a world where reality itself had become partisan, where facts were treated as opinions and lies as valid perspectives, Crockett had shown that truth still had power. Not because she said it did, but because she proved it. The crowd's eruption wasn't just approval, it was recognition. Recognition that they'd been gaslit. Recognition that it wasn't their fault for feeling confused. Recognition that with the right tools and preparation, anyone could stand up to manipulation and win. As one audience member, a teacher from Chester, told a reporter afterward, "I felt crazy for years, like I was living in two different realities. Tonight showed me I wasn't crazy. The lies were real, and now I know how to fight them." Remember that thunderous applause? That moment when 300 Americans rose as one? That wasn't just a crowd cheering. That was democracy itself standing up, stretching its legs after years of being gaslit into submission. That was the sound of truth getting the standing ovation it had been denied for far too long. Jasmine Crockett didn't just destroy Kellyanne Conway's argument in 30 seconds. She gave millions of Americans permission to trust their own eyes again. She showed us that we weren't crazy for thinking lies were lies, that facts were facts, that truth wasn't just one option on a menu of alternatives. One prepared woman, 30 seconds of receipts, an entire auditorium on its feet. That's all it took to remind us that in the fight between truth and lies, truth is still undefeated. It just needs champions willing to step into the ring. But here's what should really inspire you. Crockett isn't superhuman. She's not uniquely gifted with some special power. She simply did what any of us can do. She prepared, she documented, she refused to play the gaslighting game. She showed us that the tools to fight back against manipulation aren't mysterious or complex. They're as simple as keeping receipts and having the courage to present them. The crowd's cheers represented something beautiful. Americans are hungry for leaders who tell the truth. Not their truth, not alternative truth, but actual, verifiable, receipt-backed truth. We're tired of the show. We're exhausted by the performance. We want leaders who come prepared with facts and the backbone to present them. So here's your challenge. Be the Jasmine Crockett in your own life. When your boss gaslights you, have the receipts. When politicians lie to your face, bring the evidence. When anyone tries to convince you that up is down and facts have alternating views, stand firm in reality and calmly present the truth. The standing ovation isn't just for politicians who finally do their jobs. It's for every parent who teaches their kids that truth matters. For every teacher who shows students how to think critically. For every citizen who demands better from their leaders. For everyone who refuses to let lies go unchallenged. Want to see more moments where truth defeats deception? Where preparation demolishes propaganda? Where regular people get the tools to fight back against